Hello and welcome to this special show, and I have to say this is a real Davos moment. We've been able to put together some of the top CEOs who actually have a view on what should actually happen during the Obama visit. Now, President Obama coming to India, India-US relations, something that is being spoken about. And here at Davos, which of course is the reason why we are here in the snow, a lot of talk on India itself, the new government, what it means. So what should we expect from the Obama visit? What are the number one items on the agenda, and what are some of the suggestions to make? Now, many of the people out here, actually, you're going to be there having breakfast, as indeed are some of the others of you. So let me just introduce the panel I have with us. Mr. David McLennan, who's the CEO of Cargill. Sunil Mittal, of course, we all know, so it's great to have you with us. Kenneth Rogoff, one of the top strategic thinkers, if I can call you that, in the world. So it's always great to get your views on everything that's happening. Mr. Paklukha, it's great to have you with us. Bain Capital done a lot of work in India. And Mr. Rubenstein, the co-founder and the co-CEO of the Carlyle Group. It's great to have you with us as well. So, okay, out here in the snow, your thoughts for what you think should be on the agenda right now in Indo-US relations, and what is it that you think President Obama should keep in mind?
We all remember a few years ago, President Obama said he wanted to pivot to Asia, but he didn't do as much in Asia as he probably intended to do. And I now believe he wants to spend much more time in Asia, particularly in China and India. And so he really wants to strengthen relations between the two governments. And I think he enjoyed his meeting with Mr. Modi when he came, Prime Minister came to the United States, and wants to reciprocate. So I expect there will be a very good exchange between the two of them.
And do you think India's more on the agenda now than it perhaps was in the last 5-6 years, perhaps?
Absolutely. I think the Prime Minister has made it clear he wants to encourage more foreign direct investment in India, and many American companies are quite interested in increasing their money that they invest in India, and I think our company is one of them. So I think it will be a very fruitful exchange between the two of them, and I think they have a very good personal relationship.
All right. Let me get everyone to weigh in on that.
You know, about half the foreign direct investment in India is from private equity, so I think it's a very important discussion. I spoke to John Kerry last week, who's advising the president, and they're very excited about this visit. We do about $100 billion in trade with India right now, so I think there's all sorts of things we can do from a trading perspective, from freeing up some investments to go into India to build the infrastructure, and it's a very exciting time.
Kenneth Rogoff?
Well, I want to point out that here in Davos, India and the United States are sort of the two economies everyone's talking up, and in the places that are doing well. So naturally, meeting, I think, reinforces that. Surely President Obama is very interested in what the Indian government is doing in its reforms, which are very directed towards foreign investment and bringing in foreign investment. So I think they'll have a lot to talk about.
So I just actually heard you in one of the sessions on the new volatility, and you were saying that if you look at the it's not gloom and doom everywhere. The United States not doing badly, India not doing badly, and therefore that gives a certain importance to this meeting.
Absolutely, I think it's a good moment for the two of them to be appearing together because they're doing well, and not many other countries are doing as well.
Right. Sunil Mittal, we've been seeing a reasonable amount of gloom about India the last 3 or 4 Davoses. There's a sense that India lost the plot. What happened to the India story? There was so much happening. It went sour a bit. Different mood leading up to this Obama visit?
Oh yes, it's a very different mood. I mean, India is being talked about. Sessions are full up of the ministers. They are very heavily committed. I think you heard from the 3 of the big investors or potential policy players in the world to talk very positively about India. I think the visit that is coming up in the next week is coming in the backdrop of a very good mood in India, very high levels of interest from the US. Having said that, I think the level needs to be stepped up significantly. Secretary Kerry last week when we met him in Ahmedabad mentioned the FDI from the US is an impressive $36 billion. I personally believe it should be $360 billion. $36 billion for a US-India engagement is rather modest.
Mr. McLennan, you may get a chance to meet Mr. Modi. If so, what would be the sort of things that you're wanting to say to him?
Well, just to be clear, I had breakfast with him in September, so I won't be at the breakfast next week. But nonetheless, I was part of a group in September during the UN meetings that had a chance to meet him. I found him very impressive. He's a straight talker. He's very supportive of business. And the question I asked him, or the statement I made, was help us be more efficient in terms of being in the ag and food business in India. Right now, when we develop new products, new innovations for food, it takes up to a year to get it approved. And it simply takes, therefore, it takes longer for us to get it to the market, to the consumers. So a key point for us is help eliminate the bureaucracy, help speed to market for a company like Cargill.
And what did he say to you?
He said he was supportive of doing that. He understood it. I mean, he seemed to quickly resonate to the points that were made at the breakfast by myself. David was there and others. But my sense was that he wants to help India's economy, he wants to help the consumer, and that he will do whatever it takes to help a company like ours succeed and thrive.
Let me just add that I was in that breakfast, and it was unusual. Most heads of state or prime ministers, they give their little speech and then they maybe listen for a minute and then they go. He let every single person give their little presentation, and he responded to every point that everybody gave. So he was obviously well informed and obviously knows what he's talking about. In the private equity world, one thing that I try to encourage is to have a larger indigenous private equity industry. China has a very large private equity industry. In India, it's not that large. One of the reasons is that insurance companies and pension funds cannot invest in private equity in India. I hope that change can be made so that more people can benefit from what private equity can do in India.
Anything that you said at the breakfast in addition to what we just heard?
Well, we all said that we thought that encouraging more foreign direct investment was good, and that his openness was quite welcome. There aren't that many Indian prime ministers who were as familiar with our businesses as he was, so we were all impressed, and I think he left New York and left Washington with a lot of new supporters and friends.
Right, but if I could just ask you the things that have been perhaps going wrong in the last 3 or 4 years, because you have to first understand what the problem is before it can be fixed. So what, to your mind, maybe each of you can weigh in, are the key issues, the key problems that perhaps need to be addressed, economy and otherwise as well?
I mean, obviously, corruption is a problem in India and doing business in India, and he's had some innovations in that and having more online license registration, trying to end around some of that. I mean, they're all small, but maybe add up.
I think the speed of which disputes get judged in India, business disputes, I think is very important. It sometimes takes 4 years, 3-4 years. It's got to be faster. Also, employment rules. India has employment rules where you have to get approval from the government if you're over 100 people. I think they've raised that to 300 now, but that limit should probably be raised again to make employment more robust.
All right. Any other issues?
Well, look, we're recognizing in the United States that we have a country, in our country, where we got 317 million people, and getting that country to do any one thing is not easy. Getting a country with 1.3 billion people to do anything is not that easy, so it's not a modest task that he has in front of him.
All right.
I wouldn't say what has gone wrong, but what could go better. So, for example, in the agriculture and farming industry, there are restrictions on who farmers can sell their products to, a middle person, if you will. And so it adds cost, it adds time. So anything that can be done to modernize restrictions, laws, policies such as that. There are also restrictions on storing grain. And I understand the backdrop of it relative to food security, but nonetheless the efficiency of allowing companies like Cargill to get closer to the farmer and simplify and make more efficient the supply chain, that will make the business and the ag economy better.
Of course, we've heard a lot from the government. Now we're starting to see some action, on the ordinances that have come, 10, 11 of them, talk about reining in tax terrorism, stuff like that. Are you satisfied with the action we have seen, or is it a long process that we're going to see?
No, I think there's been a fundamental shift in the attitude of the government. They are not only at the same time pro-business, they believe in social programs at the same time, but not at the cost of businesses. So FDI opening up are some of the real matters for the U.S. Insurance is done through an ordinance. It will go through, hopefully, the upper house or through the joint session. Defense is done to 49%. I think only one point that remains is the multi-brand retail where Walmart and others could come into India. I think that part remains, and that needs to be debated as we go forward. The e-commerce, where a lot of foreign investment has come through, is a flashpoint which is building a very nice debate around the opening up, and I believe up to 49% opening up in multi-brand retail should also be a possibility. Then to the issue of food and agriculture, abolition of APMC Act, that's what's being referred to here, where large companies cannot go to the farmers directly, is being handled decisively. States are being incentivized to dismantle APMC Act, and some states have gone ahead and done that. I believe these are very early signs of the government's determination to do things, but a lot more is coming.
India has lots of advantages. First of all, oil is cheaper. Second, very bright population, educated population. It really should take off if you can get some of these reforms through.
Yeah, I mean, the drop of oil, which people are expressing so much concern about, and the impact of that in countries like Russia and Brazil, is, for India, one of the best pieces of news possible.
Huge good piece of news for India. And if Modi can get these reforms through, there could be a real renaissance of business there, because you have all the ingredients to do it: a smart population base, you have demand, you have one of the world's largest democracies, so it could be really exciting.
I think India is now importing 75% of the oil it consumes, so this is really helpful. But also the currency is important. The currency has gone down against the dollar for many years, and as a result, it hasn't been as attractive to investors who make money by investing in India but then have to bring it back. Now the currency has stabilized a bit and come up against the dollar. I think it's much more helpful.
Well, you know, the last few years here at Davos, I heard many people saying that, look, we get some of the problems, but what we are finding very difficult to deal with are policy flip-flops, you know, retrospective taxation, some of the tax stuff that's happening, regulations changing around. That leads to uncertainty. Uncertainty is never very good for business. Is that something that you think is now being addressed, or would that be something you would continue to stress on?
Yes, very simply, which is to say every indication is that Prime Minister Modi is going to create certainty, is going to knock down the barriers, is going to address the policies which make it difficult to do business. And like in any country, you're willing to bet, you're willing to invest more if you feel there's a level of reliability to the government and to policies that are coming. So it's not so much waiting for things to change as seeing there's a directionality that gives me confidence that I'll bring more money into the country.
Arun Jaitley is going to be here, is speaking here at Davos, and so the question of tax terrorism and, you know, regulatory uncertainty, is that one of the messages you would like to see him addressing as well?
I think he's been continuously doing so. There was a big global summit last week. He made a big point there as well. I think this government is very clear that the world should get comfortable with the Indian tax regime. More importantly,
but it needs to be a stable, non-adversarial tax regime, which is also what they seem to be saying.
Yeah, it's a predictable, non-adversarial, sustainable tax regime. I think this government is committed to one thing, to what we have heard here. Prime Minister is very clear: make it easy for business. He wants to take ease of doing business in India from 144 to 50 in less than 1 year. I mean, all these things can only happen if the tax pieces are sorted out, investment pieces are sorted out. And I think there is every sign of him being very determined.
But, you know, when we come back to those questions of regulatory uncertainty and uncertainty in general and tax problems and all that, of course there is one still issue that a lot of this has to still go through Parliament, and if there's gridlock in the US, there's gridlock in India as well. I mean, Parliament's been stuck for a while.
Well, I think the President of the United States will probably say to the Prime Minister he wishes he controlled his Congress as much as Mr. Modi controls his Parliament. So
only the lower house.
Well, but he has a much greater influence now in the Parliament than his predecessors did, I think. And I think he can get some things through. The President obviously faces Republican control in both House and the Senate, so he's going to spend more time looking at things abroad probably, because getting things through the Congress is not going to be easy. All right?
Yeah, I agree. The key is going to be to get really stability, have business know what the rules are, and when that happens, I think you could have a real positive effect for India.
Well, let's look at the broader relationship, right? There are other issues other than just the economics of it. Obviously, both sides are talking about the fact that India and America are in some way natural allies, key, you know, strategic partners, and all of that. Obviously, there are irritants as well. Now, some of them have been dealt with, like the WTO issue, which was dealt with. Other issues will still remain, including geopolitics. What's going to happen with Pakistan? What's going to happen in Afghanistan at some point? What about Iran, Russia? You know, those issues, are they going to be irritants, or can they be sorted out?
Well, of course they can be sorted out. I think the U.S., it's a delicate balancing act that they're trying to be everybody's friend, but some people are not friends with each other. And so India is, of course, a stable democracy. It's a natural ally. I think the U.S. has a habit of taking countries for granted. You could look at Latin America, you know, often complains about that. And I'm glad President Obama is paying more attention. I'm glad he's giving it more weight, because, I mean, at the end of the day, India is by far, you know, the largest of these countries, the third largest economy in Asia, and I think it's really important.
So you think they will be able to deal with whatever the irritants there are? I mean, you know, what's happening in Pakistan, or what's, you know, why is India talking to Russia or, you know, Iran and stuff like that? That can be handled, do you think?
Come on. I mean, it's not easy to do overnight. They each have their domestic constituencies that they have to appeal to. But, I mean, I think it's important for the U.S. to pay more attention to India and Latin America, I might say, because, you know, at the end of the day, your friend should come first.
Right. If I may add, my own view is it's always been, you know, a bit of a puzzle why U.S. doesn't engage with India at a significant level. They're natural partners. I think even in the previous government, at least in the first few years, we saw the impasse on the nuclear issue getting resolved, and there was a hope that things will move up.
Well, not entirely. The liability issue is still open-ended.
Which never went up. I'm saying there was a big hope. U.S. must engage with India in a big way. China was almost created out of the U.S. Manufacturing bases being transferred there. I think it's time for U.S. to start looking at India in a very, very new and open way.
Okay.
I would hope that, the world's going bilateral in a lot of cases, and so I think they can keep those issues to the side. But I agree that there is so much synergy between India and the U.S. that languages are the same. China was created by the things that you talked about, and I'm hopeful that he can focus on those bilateral issues and we get the trade going, and it'll be a great partnership.
Well, you mentioned China. How does China play out in all of this? And on both sides, in the U.S. and in India, there's some wariness about China, and yet the U.S. has so much invested, in every sense of the word in China. Is India going to come up to anywhere close to that level, do you think?
I think not in the short term. It's going to take a while to catch up. And being in China and being in India, they're not mutually exclusive. But the Chinese have done a good job in the recent years in terms of their infrastructure and being supportive of business. And India still has a ways to go. But I think ultimately they will converge. But it's going to be a while.
Right. China.
China and the United States that is probably the most important bilateral relationship in the world because they are the two biggest economic powers, and I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. But I think India can become a more significant relationship with the United States than it has been.
So again, in becoming a more significant relationship, and again, is it something that's going to be back on the back of President Obama's mind? The fact is that in the world today, this is the point that we were making a little earlier, there aren't that many bright spots. And so India right now we're seeing the stock market in India at an all-time high, and things like that. Is that one of the reasons why it's easier to say, let's put more of our bets in India right now? Or is it still premature? Do you think people are going to wait and watch, see whether the intentions of the Modi government are translated into actions, and that's when the big bets will be made?
I think the fact that the Prime Minister seems much more open to having a closer relationship with the United States is a major factor. Of course, everybody has to wait a while to see whether he can deliver, but I think people are willing to give him the benefit of the doubt.
All right.
Yeah, India is a large country, 4 times the size of the United States in people, so nothing changes overnight, but the signs are very positive, and you'll get some tipping point if you keep going that direction. I think the relations will be great.
I would just say implementation is important. I mean, we're on a honeymoon period still, and we have to see what happens, but there are a lot of right signs, things in the right direction, but only time will tell what it really happens.
Small things, like right now you have instant visas when you come from the U.S. You didn't used to have that even 6 months ago. Mm-hmm. That's going to help tourism. If it takes you 2 weeks to get a visa to go to a country, you probably go to a different country. So it's fantastic now you get an instant visa when you land in Delhi or Mumbai.
All right. Final thoughts from you?
Electronic hardware manufacturing. I think this Make in India, in that particular piece, the U.S. needs to start manufacturing in India as well, whether it's the semiconductor pieces or the more effective.
So Make in India is one of the things you would expect Prime Minister Modi to be telling President Obama that let's see what we can do to get Make in India going.
I think that will be on the top of the list. No question about
that. On top of the list?
Yes.
All right. Final thoughts from you.
I'm encouraged that President Obama is going there. I agree with the sentiments expressed. It's about time. And, a nation of 1.2 billion people needs to have more attention from our country and from our president. And so I think it's a positive first step. And we all know India does a great job of technology outsourcing. And let's help make India known for other industries such as agriculture and food.
All right. I almost get worried when everyone is sounding so optimistic and bullish because, sometimes you wonder what the catch is. But do you think, by and large, all of you sound optimistic?
We want to make sure we get our visa when we go.
All right. Absolutely. So,
I think the signs are there, but it's got to be, the proof will be in the pudding and implementation.
Absolutely.
So generally optimistic.
Optimistic, but, let's see what happens.
Right. Okay. Optimistic, but let's see what happens. But by and large, you can sense what the mood out here is in Davos. And obviously, those expectations are there for the Obama visit. And let's see how it goes. The signs and the signals seem promising. And this is a particularly good time, I think, for India in the context of whatever's happening in the globe to really get an impact made. Let's see if we are going to see a transformation in this relationship and other things as well over the next few days and weeks and months ahead. That's it for the moment from us here in Davos.